Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A session with National Service Scotland. We have Jonathan Cameron and Carol Sinclair, and from Scottish Government we have Albert King. We're here to answer questions about Challenge 3. The challenge put forward by NSS and SG is the first joint challenge that we have, and it's also the first comeback of a client that we have. So a question from me to Carol and Jonathan is, what made you decide to come back to CivTech?
From my perspective, it was just because it was such a great process. First time around, we got access to a lot of companies, some brilliant ideas, and just great support all around. And our first two challenges have been really successful, and we're just really keen to repeat that again.
So for me, as NSS sponsor for CivTech, I'm taking a wider view because actually I see the medium to longer term potential of being a participant and leader around this work. The first two challenges we had through the first phase, phenomenally successful. I mean, they just blew us away. The quality of the bidders, the experience of working with these small companies, and the quality of the product or solutions that they brought vastly exceeded our expectations. I mean, really, I can't say enough good things about it. I would be absolutely struggling to say anything negative about it, and that's not a lie. So I'm hoping for the same this time round.
Absolutely. Expectations are low.
Expectations are high.
And a question also on that is, if you can talk about it, on the other side of CivTech, the companies that you got to working with, did they achieve what they set out to? Is there any work coming forward for them? Is there a partnership that you guys developed going forward? How was that experience?
Yes, we will absolutely be taking both companies forward, and the experience and understanding, and actually watching the companies grow has been really interesting. So one of the companies we're working with started off with just 3 employees. They've now just appointed, I think, their 9th person. So to see them grow in such a short space of time and have that backing by knowing that we're one of their key customers, I think it's been made a big difference for them. And for both of them to go out and say we're working with the NHS in Scotland is a big deal for them. So we've been delighted to help them, and it's been great to see how SMEs grow and develop, and really want to try that again and develop another one in Scotland.
And I think for us that Challenge 3 is beginning to explore the edges of that bidder community, that where are the innovators that we can work with? Maybe by design, maybe by coincidence, it was SMEs we had for our first two, but that may not be the case for this type of challenge or other ones that we'll bring. So we're not constrained in our thinking at all about who we should be working with. And I think for the first two organisations or companies we worked with, one of the good things was they wouldn't allow us to play safe. They constantly stretched us to consider things that had been even beyond our wildest imaginings. And the reason we went with them in that partly was just their sheer enthusiasm, but also the skills that they brought. They have exceptional knowledge. And CivTech, one of the other things I think that worked exceptionally well for the guys was that all the other stuff that's wrapped around them about entrepreneurship, presentational skills, business skills, Jonathan's point, we have seen them grow before our very eyes, but in a remarkably supportive and nurturing environment where everybody knows everybody. So there are many features of CivTech that I think actually came together to allow these to fly. Not just simply we wrote very good challenges, of course, but they developed way beyond the original scope, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely delivered. I mean, the bottom line is, through the exploration phase and through the accelerator, everything was bang on.
Albert, let's give you some airtime as well. What are your expectations? Why did you decide to come on the journey with
So I work in Scottish Government. I work really closely with these guys from NSS ISD. So you can hear from what they're saying, this quality of testimonial is quite difficult to ignore. I mean, that quality of experience is a lot of the reason why I think we're engaged with this. And the ability to access that level of innovation, having seen some of the solutions that came forward from myself, I'm keen to work with some of the guys that were successful last time around as well, and we're looking to do that with at least one. So being able to access those quality of solutions and have some of our thinking both challenged and enriched very much as Carol has described. So the opportunity to do that really was something that I was really keen to get involved in. And but yeah, as I say, you can't get better testimonials than that, really, can you? So you just have to live up to that.
Hopefully we'll get the same level of outcomes this time round. So we're going to be live for the next 45 minutes to an hour. You can send any questions that you have to civtech@gov.scot, and I'll read them out, and the guys will answer for you. But we have already some questions that came through. First one is, I guess, the obvious one. Is there open data sets that these guys can go in and start playing around with real data?
Yes, so we have a lot of data already published on statistics.gov.uk, and health actually forms a big part of that. We're also within NSS are just about to launch our own open data platform, so that will also add to the data that's available. Shortage of data is not an issue on this. I think the challenge we have is we have so many publications, so many things that we're putting out there, and we don't know how it's being used. We don't know if it's having the impact it should have. And that, for me, is the core of what we're really trying to explore. But a shortage of data is not going to be, as I say, a problem on this. I don't know. Albert, you want to add anything to that from your perspective? Obviously, we have health data, but you cover a much broader range of things.
Yeah, so just as you say, Jonathan, statistics.gov.scot is a great place to look. But if there was a one-stop shop for statistics, official statistics data in Scotland, we kind of wouldn't be having this conversation. So, you know, looking at the Scottish Government website with all the statistics publications on there, at the National Records of Scotland website, at the NSS SG website, will give you a sense of not just what's published as open data, but the various myriad ways that we disseminate data, and some sense of the challenge that users, I'm not saying they do face, maybe it's all fine, but users may face in actually assembling the information across all of those diverse sources.
I think there's, do you have anything to add on that, Karen?
No, not at the moment, that's fine.
I think this dovetails quite nicely into the second question I have here, which is that are there any ongoing projects that you guys are leading on with related to this data?
Yeah, so possibly my colleague Gregor might be better placed to talk about what we've done around user experience already in the Scottish Government. Yeah, do you want to join us, Gregor? So introduce Gregor Boyd.
Added, yeah.
Do you want to take a shot from Office of the Chief Statistician? Gregor, take it away.
Yeah, we're still pretty early stages of better understanding user needs. We've been working closely with the Office for National Statistics. They're much further ahead than us, and they've developed a lot of different user personas, ranging from the sort of expert users who know everything there is about our data, and they've got the analytical expertise to do amazing things with it. That then ranges to a sort of inquiring citizen type user. This is someone who really is just looking to find the truth in all of the data we've got. They will likely be degree educated, but they're not going to be a sort of data expert or anything like that. Beyond that, we don't really think that we probably engage with actual citizens in the sort of broadest sense. So at the moment, we're doing a bit of work to check that the user personas that ONS have developed, to check if they apply to Scottish users as well. So we're involving ISD and National Records of Scotland in that too. In Scotland, we've also got a list of about 3,000 users of official statistics between the three big organisations, us, ISD and National Records of Scotland. And that's people who've actually signed up to say that they're interested in official statistics and they want to be consulted about them. So it's a really good resource for us if we just want to quickly get the answer to a question, if we want to get people in to speak to them or whatever. So we've not got a lot of information on user experience, but we're starting to get there, and we do have a lot of people who would like to be involved and help us on it.
Good. Thanks. Thanks, Gregor.
Really give you your seat.
Sure. Feel free to stay on the couch in case you're needed again. Next question, is there any work from NSS's point of view?
No, we've done very little on user experience, and that for us was our starting point for this challenge. Is, you know, we don't know how things are being used. Is it the right thing? Is it even in the right format? So understanding all of that and then ultimately presenting it and allowing us to have a bigger impact with book publishing is the core, really, as I say, what we're doing with this.
We have done a little bit of work through an internal improvement project to benchmark ourselves against other large organisations who generate and produce national and official statistics to try and understand how well we're meeting the end user needs, but more just by benchmarking to see what others do, rather than checking that what others do is actually any better than what we do, although we maybe have a perception that some of them are outperforming us in terms of certain aspects of that. So we're looking to understand what best in class actually means, and also to understand where our best opportunities are to learn from others. You know, the mantra of improvement is to steal shamelessly, because the old adage is don't reinvent wheels. And the risk is that if you do it in isolation, you do simply reinvent wheels. So people who can help us find these unknown unknowns, but we will offer up to people everything we know through whatever form of work we're already doing or we know others are doing, I think would be really useful to us. So some work, one of your challenges will be to cobble it together into a coherent analysis, because although we're getting better at collaborating, and I think there's some very good data infrastructure work going on, it's at quite early stage as well.
Okay. Another question we have here is, are there any other products out there that you could just go and buy it, and why weren't they fit for purpose?
From memory, I don't think we could find anything. We certainly didn't take too long, but you know, someone who spent quite a bit of time in IT, particularly in health, I'm definitely not aware of anything that kind of has that thing around making data come alive, you know, making it more engaging. So that's why we've reached out through CivTech, because there was nothing obviously jumping out that confirms this has been done before.
I think it's because of the volume and variety of the information. I mean, as you both said earlier, there is no shortage of information and data. The challenge is that we need to make it far more accessible to people who to then maximise the utility of that. So we don't understand who people are using it, but we also have a challenge about understanding the impact it's having as a consequence. So we invest a lot in developing and publishing national and official statistics. We're required by law to do that. Yes, but. So we're looking to really enrich the experience, and we can do that in part through understanding the user personas better.
Another question related to that is this about all of Scotland's statistics, all of the country's statistics, or is there a specific field that you should be focusing on?
So I think this is about, this challenge really is about all Scottish official statistics. It is that broad. The two sponsors, Scottish Government and NHS, clearly have particular interest, I guess, in progressing that aspect of it. But National Records of Scotland as well is a large producer that is very much involved. And ultimately there are, Gregor, you probably know this figure better than I do, how many producers of official statistics?
In Scotland.
Yeah, so and some of them quite small, you know, maybe only with one release a year, say, but ultimately solutions that can help people navigate that breadth of landscape would be fantastic, I guess.
For those just joining in, I've seen there's a couple of people joining in. You can send your questions to our mailbox at civtech@gov.scot, and we'll read them out to the guys here. But we have some other questions through. What's the biggest success metric for this challenge?
I think from my perspective, it's proving that citizen engagement. And I think trying to find a way of demonstrating that more people are using the information, more people are talking about it. But it's very vague, I must admit, you know, and I think in line with the first two challenges that we did. We're open to being challenged, and we're open to say that where could this take us. So yeah, I think some of the other challenges are maybe very metric driven. We've got some set ideas, and I think we're just going, help us. And I think just but anything that proves that we have increased patient engagement or sorry, citizen engagement even is really key for us.
I think the other aspect of what success looks like, and without running the risk, hopefully, of giving somebody what they think and maybe tell them is what we want, it's not, it's an idea, is could we create a set of dynamic case studies where actually we have an increasing portfolio of stories that are telling us how that this type of data and information is actually improving the quality of people's lives in Scotland. That is one way we could do it, but there will be a range of qualitative and quantitative process and outcome metrics that we will look to co-design with the successful company, because we have some ideas and some will be easier to do than others, but we shouldn't be constrained by difficulty, because that would be playing safe. That's not what CivTech's about.
Absolutely. Anything on that, Albert?
Maybe just to observe, so as well as the customer side of things, I guess I would also expect us to have a better understanding of how people are using the data as well, and be able to use that to inform our processes and design.
I guess that leads in on to the next question nicely, which is what difference will this make to the citizens of Scotland? How will their lives be improved? No question.
Actually, it's not that difficult for me, funnily enough, because I've got quite a clear idea. For me, I want data and intelligence-led decision-making at every level, be it from a personal outcomes approach. What do I want in my life for my life? What does my community want and need? But also, how are we then influencing policy and strategy at a national level, based on the fact that people are just simply more literate around the use of this type of information. So there's a knowledge transfer effect that we want to generate through this work, that there's an energy and an appetite and a noise that says this is really important, but we need to perhaps explore what that means to different stakeholders, and that could be a key part of the early work, so that we can agree at the outcome of what goes into accelerator phase, basically.
Yeah.
Sorry, outset.
What level of access to both data and even citizen groups and to information within the Scottish Government and the NSS will you guys be able to provide to the companies, and at what stage will that come in?
I think, as mentioned earlier, no shortage of data. So certainly up front, no problem with all the open data we have, and certainly anything that's available to the public, we can certainly share straight away. It's available now. Citizen groups is an interesting one. I think that might depend on the ideas that come back, but certainly we're very well engaged with the likes of third sector organisations. It could potentially be a group that we discuss this with. I know, Albert, some of the work you've talked about previously means that you've got links to some groups. Or if you want to touch on those, yeah.
Yeah, so, and as you say, Jonathan, I think we'd be very, very happy to make those sorts of connections at the right time in the project. You'll appreciate that these are groups that people give their time up for. They might be groups of professional users. They might be citizens, and yeah, we would be more than happy to facilitate those sorts of engagements. And then, as Gregor says, there's also a sort of very large database of currently engaged users of official statistics that we could potentially facilitate access to through the ScotStat mechanism. ScotStat. Yeah, ScotStat.
Gregor's nodding in the back. So. Who do you think is interested in this information?
That actually is one of our key questions.
Yeah.
We can take a guess at who we think is. We've got, as we said, database of 3,000 interested individuals, but they are activated and informed individuals. And actually, one of the challenges for us is to move beyond the sort of confines of that type of community, and to, I think I said earlier, is to maybe create a bit of sense of excitement about actually the depth of information, the richness that actually, if it's unleashed or unlocked, can be really powerful at every level of government, be it centralised or otherwise. So we have to think about how we see this information and data facilitating, enabling across traditional boundaries of centralised government, local government, NHS, justice, communities, housing, education. All of it is seen or described usually in vertical silos or entities. And actually the richness is when you manage to connect across and create that linkage and therefore depth of analysis. And that really understanding, Gregor gave me this phrase some years ago about multifactorial analysis. Nothing operates in isolation. So a single factor is not what drives an outcome. How well do we understand that? And how well do communities understand the value of linking data? So the other thing I think that can come out of this, and this is absolutely fundamental, is that people understand why it's important to share their data in a trusted environment with trusted partners. But without people giving access to their data, we are poorer for it. So if we can think about that going through this, that would be a really important outcome for us.
Yeah, I was going to add the word transparent to that. I think
Yes.
there's a real thing about showing people what we're actually doing with the data and trying to reassure and just get greater buy-in to this whole move towards using data and information in a better way. So there's a real opportunity with this challenge to help us with that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Albert. If you
I
have
was going to say,
anything
I think Carol said it very well, to be honest. I think it's people who want to be better informed, whether that's about, my community, my school, my GP, through to academic researchers who want to look across the whole of Scotland and look at that kind of multifactorial analysis, and maybe actually even entrepreneurs who might want to use, transport data combined with population data to produce some funky app that tells something useful about how to use the road system. So it really could be anybody.
We have a question here. Could I partner with another organization or another startup to deliver the solution?
Definitely. One of the things we looked at in the first round of CivTech was to look at the combinations of companies coming forward, and it may be that there's a small startup or a single or sole trader who has some good ideas but maybe lacks some of the critical mass that is needed to deliver some of these projects. So we would always encourage collaboration and partnerships. It helps the individuals participating, but it also helps us engage more widely with the whole range of people. And actually, just to say, one of the things that came out last time, and it's the co-location within Codebase, is the fact that the people working on the 9 challenges intuitively and instinctively started connecting, collaborating without being required to, expected to do, or even, just, it was an inevitable outcome because they were co-located. So if you've got somebody in mind, talk to them, show them this trail of Q&A, talk to the guys at CivTech, because we've got examples where that's happened previously. And in fact, our previous 2 challenges, there was a point where we almost joined them together, and they still have a high degree of synergy, probably because of the way we wrote them, but it was an important opportunity to explore that kind of partnering.
We have a question here that relates to the previous 2 challenges, which is, this challenge is a bit more dry than the previous 2. Can you give us a bit more of a background to try to entice us?
Entice us. I kind of think we're being quite exciting already, but Albert, you're getting more excited too.
Well, okay, so clearly that's nonsense. This is a very exciting challenge. So, to me, official statistics, how people use information to be better informed, to drive decision making, that is exciting. If it's not, then maybe you need to think about other uses of this kind of technology as well. So whether you're assembling information from across complex sources in Scottish official statistics, or whether you're working in a large organization where there's data in all sorts of formats all over the place, and you want to understand how to bring that together to help your decision making. This is a challenge people face in all sorts of contexts, and bringing technology to bear to solve this, to solve this problem, I think is actually a really interesting and challenging problem for people to solve. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about all the ways that people might solve it and getting quite excited about it. So, but I don't know, what would you say, Colin?
Well, I was just thinking something you said there about what is the onward potential for you. You know, you'll give us a solution, and we will take it forward, but you'll want to know the added value that you can get from this. So what's the commercialization that is associated with this? And I think, Albert, you've begun to touch on that this is not a solution that will be unique to official and national statistics in Scotland. It will give you the wherewithal to look at a myriad of different scenarios where people have similar challenges, different context, maybe different variety of data, volume of data, but it will still have value and commercial value, because we're not unique in the questions we're asking ourselves today. Many others around the world, not just the UK or even Scotland, are asking the same questions. So I would say it absolutely hang in there. There is huge potential around this.
I completely agree with that. Anything to add on that, John?
No, absolutely.
When it comes to patient confidentiality, is any of this data that you're trying to share part of that patient confidentiality?
Generally speaking, no, or certainly not initially. But if depending on which way the solution goes, there might be the potential that we start adding in patient data. So it could be something that's specific for, a GP practice, or something about the best place to go. So it might be something that you start using statistics to help people decide, I'm better off going to out of hours with that, or calling NHS 24 rather than automatically going to A&E. So potential's there, but certainly our intention right up front is we don't think we'll need to use that level of data, but that might be a future step. And one of the things we would do is help the company with that. So we would go through all the appropriate information governance processes if that was necessary to do so. And that's part of our commitment as being, CivTech challenge sponsor. We will, address those challenges or potential barriers if we need to. But I'm reasonably confident, certainly initially, there's lots of data out there already, so we hopefully won't have to go there.
I think it's also associated with understanding the granularity that is needed for people to answer the question they're asking. So for instance, we have one of our key products and services is a discovery platform around acute hospital data. And we're having conversations both internally and externally about how can we make some of that information available to the public, and at what level should that information be shared in order to protect confidentiality. So I think some of the learning we get from this challenge will help us understand how to do that. And it will give us a much richer community to engage with, because we'll learn more about our personas, we'll learn more about the interested people in Scotland, and we'll understand what needs to happen at a national or community or individual level. There's many, many things that you can explore with us to make this feel relevant. So if I were to say what I want out of it, I want people to think that what they can get access to is relevant, meaningful, and useful.
Or makes a change.
And
so
creates change.
Can actually, impact on. Yeah.
It's about creating impact.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. This sounds very much like a user experience challenge at its heart. Would you agree?
Short answer is yes. It's that citizen engagement and understanding, and helping us make the data come alive. So at its heart, yes, user experience, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are 4 V's involved in big data? Is there one that you're focusing on? And maybe give a bit background about these 4 V's.
Well, Carol's mentioned quite a few of them already. So certainly we've got volume. What's the other ones? Veracity.
Variety.
Well, we've certainly got a very diverse set of data, haven't we? So variety is right there, isn't it? So, yeah.
I think it's probably the velocity is probably the key one we want to focus on, and it's about people picking up on the data at the right time and making that decision at the right time. Some of our official statistics, for a whole variety of good reasons, are months after the event, and what we're really hoping to find out from this is, there is a demand for real-time or near real-time data, or at least data that is faster, because that would then have a better impact for the citizens. So very interested to find out as part of this whole solution if that really is a driver or not.
I've got a query as well, because I think the world is 24/7, 365, everything yesterday, nothing tomorrow. You know, that you want for nothing, everything is at your fingertips, except national official statistics, which takes time to process and to release. Therefore, if we can think about how to create its value and worth by linking it with other big data that perhaps has that velocity that people crave, because there will be stories to be found within the national official stats as it's layered into and woven into other forms of big data. Because if you look at social media data, what are people saying about the NHS in Scotland now? And how does that reflect with what the national official statistics say has happened at a point in time? Is it showing very little difference? Is it suggesting that there's big changes happened and maybe we need to understand that or check out whether that's valid or otherwise? So there's many, many ways we can bring this to life, but the 4 V's of variety, velocity, volume and veracity. Veracity is the one thing it absolutely tops out on because of the processes that sit around it. I don't know if you would agree, Albert.
Yeah, I think what's quite interesting about that point, I was thinking about that as you were speaking, oddly enough. So the quality of our statistics is very high. So from that perspective, it's a given. I guess what's quite interesting is that sometimes there are a number of different ways of looking at a particular angle or a particular way of measuring something that might apply in different circumstances. So helping people understand which piece of information actually answers the question that they have, I think is quite an interesting angle on it. And I suppose is a take on veracity, but yeah.
And it may be that velocity is a red herring.
Yeah,
Maybe we're worried about it more than people are worried about it, because they understand the niche or the pigeonhole that fits into, because it has value. It's got inherent value and it's got current value. And that's the kind of thing. There's urban myths all over this stuff, by the way, and we want to bust some of them. So that will be part of the process we go through with you, should you end up working with us.
Just want to remind everyone that you can send your questions to civtech@gov.scot. If you have tweeted questions to us or LinkedIn or Facebook, we're not checking social media. So if you have any questions, please send them to the mailbox, civtech@gov.scot. Let me just read out another one. Large companies regard data as gold. How would you safeguard against potentially large companies coming in to harvest this data?
It's interesting. We do get, as you can imagine, a lot of demand from a number of companies, particularly in pharma, that have to understand the data. I think we have the appropriate controls and processes in place, and I think, again, just to stress, our focus for this challenge is things we're already publicly, publishing or making available already. So, but going beyond open data, going to that. What would really help make the data come alive? What would support people making more use of it? So I think I'd be reasonably comfortable that we wouldn't hit that kind of barrier. And as I say, we have got a number of safeguards and processes in place for that already.
No, I would agree with that. It's open data. So
I think what it might do is push our boundaries around that and get into more of an open environment where open data is part of our journey towards that. And if we to look at 5-star open data, that is the absolute pinnacle of pretty much everything going out there, with the appropriate protections around that. We're some way off that, to say the least. So this is part of our journey towards that, I suppose, in terms of understanding on a practical and intellectual basis what the needs of the next 10, 20 years could be around national and official stats, because it's in our gift, isn't it, to decide what we publish.
Absolutely.
It's not some of it is described, but we have, I think, perhaps more leeway than some believe or understand. And again, if that's a message we can get out there, that would be useful.
And I guess, sorry, I suppose what's quite interesting is, thinking back to what I said earlier about the economic opportunity, there's ways in which, given this is data that we publish, if somebody picked this up and harvested it and made use of it to produce something that was useful to people out there, that's kind of part of the reason that we're doing it. So that would be fantastic. So yeah,
So in a way, it'd be interesting to know, though, if we added just one or two more things, it would have even greater impact. So some of it's actually getting to the detail of, we do all of this, but if you just added X and Y to it, then it would matter even more. So.
Another question that we have through, this sounds like a massive challenge. What support will we be able to give the successful company coming through?
I think one of the advantages of having, so we've been through this process. In fact, we did 2 challenges last time, so we're certainly aware of the effort that's required. And I think we've put a really good team around this. So in addition to Carol and myself and Albert and Gregor, there's going to be many others involved from both NSS and Scottish Government. And so we're going to have a dedicated project manager from the NSS side. And we're well aware of, different times there'll be different requirements and different needs, but I think we're well geared up to do that. I think we recognise that the more we put in, the better the outcome anyway. So we're very up for that and make sure that we'll have the right support in at the right time.
I think it's also the methodology that CivTech have around challenges is something that we can use to good effect in terms of managing the expectations and scope, not to constrain innovation, don't get me wrong, but the process itself delivers a certain type of interaction and dialogue that I think helps chunk it. So, what's the best way to eat an elephant? Cut it up and eat it in bits. It's the same with this challenge, cut it up and eat it in bits. We may not be able to do everything, and that's okay. It's the nature of an innovation cycle. There may be iterative cycles to be gone through over time. So don't worry about it. We'll work with you on managing that massiveness if that's how it feels initially.
And these guys have been stellar challenge sponsors for the cohort 1. They really got on the ground with the 2 companies that they selected. They helped them a great way, and these companies are now growing in part due to the work that you guys put forward. So if you do come through, don't worry about the support you'll get. These guys are amazing. Citizen science has helped in a number of areas. For example, identifying habitable planets around stars. Is there an angle to this challenge that might relate to citizen science?
That's a wow question. That's a good one.
Citizen science.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Read it again. Have you got an answer?
Well, I think, they could be a group of users who would be interested in using this data to generate insights that, I suppose, ultimately help inform policy making and policy development. So absolutely, that's another great example of ways that we could get more value out of this data if it were, the hypothesis, if it were easier to navigate. So I think my short answer would be yes.
So the other bit perhaps that we haven't really touched on is maybe because where we come from with this type of information is that we are 40, 50 years old in terms of publishing national official statistics in Scotland, maybe older in places. So we've come with processes that are maybe 40, 50 years old. So this whole idea of artificial intelligence, machine learning, actually applying machinery, not people, to this information, so that actually, because the volume is immense, it may not just be people that actually penetrate the data, it will be an AI solution in part that actually gives you, are we going to go and inhabit the stars? Because there's rich seams in there to be navigated.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in fact, AI and ML technology could have some interesting applications to the challenge generally. That's what I was thinking about earlier when I was giving myself a wee grin, but yeah, absolutely.
Without wishing to jump to a solution, of course.
No, absolutely not.
That's
sorry.
But it is an interesting area that we actually touched upon a bit with our previous challenge. But the opportunity absolutely is there, and not ruling anything out. So.
Well, absolutely. And also, it doesn't mean that it needs to. It just,
But I think what we're trying to say here is that on maybe first reading, it feels like an incremental change that we're seeking rather than an innovation. And please be assured that it is innovation and transformation that we aspire to. So nothing is too out there to be considered. And that sort of whole idea of divergent thinking comes before convergent thinking. And we would then fully participate in that with you, because we can help you navigate some of the, as you say, Jonathan, the edges, the hard edges that might feel as if they're immovable barriers. And that is another role for the challenge sponsor, is to get under and around the barriers as best we can without hindering the pace and ambition of the project. And that, I think, actually, that did come up a fair number of times in the first two. Yeah. I have to say, we did test the edges hard.
And of course, the company that comes through for this challenge will have a great advantage, which is experienced challenge sponsors. No one else will have that experience. Just a reminder, we only have a couple of questions left here, but if you do have any burning questions, send them now to CivTech@cov.scot, so we have a chance to read them out before we finish. But I guess part of this question you already answered with your previous answer, but is there anything that you really don't want to be proposed because you have had a bad experience?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would maybe shy away from slightly is providing us just another open data platform. I kind of feel that's the one element we've already invested in. We actually had a lot of ideas for that for the first challenges last year. It's one area where I think we've kind of got a good handle on. I think it's the actual platform itself for making data files available. Yeah, it's relatively straightforward. It's open source tools there anyway. I think it's taking those next steps, you know, and really, where do we take it from there? So that'd be the only element I would think. Don't just pitch up saying, here's our open data platform, because as I say, we kind of have that already.
I would also countenance caution if you think it's a good opportunity to dust something off the shelf that's been on your to-do list for a while, and you see this as maybe a cheeky opportunity to get something back on the table. We're not necessarily looking for that. In fact, I think we're not looking for that. We're looking for something that is driving the right sort of change for Scotland, that is looking beyond the 21st century conversation, and that we absolutely land with an innovative solution, something that has been not a safe option. Don't come to us with, well, this is what we'll do for you. Because if you come with a solution up front, you've misunderstood what CivTech's about. So come ready for some challenging conversations and the ability to use a whole variety of tools and techniques to help people work through optional solutions, not just option appraisal, that's too safe as well. So come open-minded, open-eyed and open-eared.
So that's good advice from colleagues. I think similar sort of vein to Jonathan, I don't really think that what we're looking for here is a website with a content management solution behind it that we then create a portal in a traditional sense. So yeah, picking up on Carol's theme, you know, we want to see some innovation and some new ways of thinking about these challenges. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. Yeah,
absolutely. Another one. Is there an intention to replace these existing data publication portals mechanisms with a new solution? And if not, how do you envisage the new solution will integrate with the existing portals?
I think from my perspective, we're open to all options. So again, without prejudging what might come through, you know, if something like a new portal wants to be part of the solution, then yeah, that's absolutely something we would consider. We are absolutely up for challenging existing processes, challenging what we've always done. We can't keep going in some areas in the status quo for a whole variety of reasons in the public sector, not least financial, and just you know, we're under constant pressure to move things forward. So I think we just have to wait and see. And I think picking up on the earlier theme there, you know, part of the CivTech process is, you know, to help us on that journey to say this is what needs to be changed, this is where it will integrate, or you know, this can stay the same. So so we don't know yet. Is probably the underlying answer to that.
I think for me that this is a challenge that could potentially be a very ripe environment for partnering, because personas is one part. So there may be high talent in one SME around personas, but they may lack some of the technical expertise? So where is a natural partner for you in that environment? And it might be that CivTech facilitate that partnering. It might not be immediately obvious, but you can certainly have a think about how you might do that. You might have some natural alliances that you could develop prior to coming into the process.
And of course, for a challenge like this, we would ask for the input of our friends in the data lab at some point to come in and
Definitely.
Yeah, so we're very close links with Data Lab already. In fact, we've run a number of projects with them, and we've had one of their data scientists in helping us on a different project. So yes, absolutely, they've already expressed a big interest in hearing the outcome from this.
Good.
Yeah.
So can I just come in on the
Of course,
integration? I'll just sneak over. Yeah, one thing which I've been really interested in is with our statistics.gov.scot open data platform. It's published 5-star linked open data, and everything on it is accessible through a Sparkle API. So we really want to get value from that. So it would be great if we had something that could integrate with that and get some benefit from that.
That's a good point.
And I think across all the organizations, different assets are at different points in their sort of refresh cycles. So, I mean, I guess one of the realities of the environment we're in, again, it depends on the nature of the solution proposed, the extent to which this is a challenge, is that we're faced with constant change, and we need to deal with that. So some of the data may be accessible through a Sparkle API, and other things may be scraping a 20-year-old content management system for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So just 2 questions left warning. So we have 2 questions left. So if you have any further ones, send them now to civtech@gov.scot. Do you think that the right solution could influence the way your respective organizations work in the future?
I think that has to be a high level aspiration. Well, not high level, an important aspiration, sorry, wrong term. This is about integration of resources, best value of public money. So we've invested over the years in infrastructure solutions, workforce who actually do all this work. So if there's something that takes us into a much improved, in fact, transformed environment, that would be an absolute bonus. It's not explicit within the challenge, but again, we're not here for incremental change. Therefore, something that's what I would call a disruptive innovation would be welcomed.
Yeah. Last one then. Do you think that the solution to this challenge could be used to reduce public sector costs in general? And is this an aim for you?
I don't know necessarily about reducing costs, but certainly thinking, as Carol's just said, best value for the investments we've made. So we can do more with current funding or with less funding, then absolutely better. But again, coming right back to the start, for me, it's about what we are doing is the right thing to do, and I think it's challenging ourselves to really prove that. We want to be absolutely certain that all the data that we're putting out there is making a difference and being able to help citizens with that in some way. So cost drivers, yeah, if that was to come, absolutely fantastic, but it's not the main driver. I think that might come many years down the line as a potential benefit to all of this, but it's certainly not something we'll be focusing on for the challenge.
I think the efficiency part is where we perhaps see a level of automation that allows us to then reinvest that human capital into doing the high-end analytics and storytelling, that sort of data science, that piece beyond the machines, which currently challenges us because we're still, in some places and in some parts, heavily process-driven about just getting the churn done in order to publish. So if we can then optimize the value of that resource, not necessarily reduce it, then I think that's a really big game changer for us as well. And maybe one of the metrics around workforce we might want to think about.
Absolutely. Just quickly on data science to say, huge interest area at the moment, and it's an area where we're starting to put a lot of effort in and try and plan for the future around that. So again, advice, thoughts, ideas related to that for this challenge are absolutely welcome.
Okay, I think I do have a question about this challenge. Who are the end users? I know it's the citizen primarily, but is there an element of staff from NSS and staff from SG being constantly on the tool, updating the information, updating what's being spit out of the of whatever the solution is coming through, or do you envision something a bit more automated than that?
So maybe that goes to some of what Carol was discussing a moment ago in terms of how we use our workforce and redirect it from routine activity towards more value-added activity. And if there's an opportunity there, we'd certainly be interested in it. But in broad terms, we're constantly producing new data that we're updating onto the various platforms that we publish data on. So it's that's constantly being refreshed. As we're also constantly consuming the data that we publish. We're probably some of the biggest consumers of our own data to inform public policy, both as analysts and also policy officials and others. So we're pretty big stakeholders, both as producers and consumers. Arguably, in the context of this challenge, not the most important stakeholders, because I think we have people out with system as being they're our prime concern, really, I guess. But yeah.
I would just reflect on that. Let's say we do have colleagues in other parts of the NHS who are not confident at all in using data. So maybe if there was a way of building people's confidence in how it's presented, or they get it, so the light bulb moment of, I now understand why you're pulling that data together, or I now understand what that's telling me. So almost a bit of a sort of add-on. If that was to happen, that would be fantastic. So yeah, there is a potential for groups and different people within the NHS certainly who are not very confident in it that we maybe could test it out with them as well. So I hadn't thought of that at all, actually. That's an interesting area.
And certainly I don't think a metric is that we want 100% of the population actively using national and official statistics. No. Because actually one highly engaged and articulate user can have a massive impact in ways way beyond their own personal reach. And that may be where you actually have a small cohort of data journalists who absolutely understand how to release the power of that information to the wider public. So we will need to think about what the metrics of success actually are, because it isn't 5.5 million users, although we talk about citizen user and the citizen use being a high goal. So it's an interesting question to pose.
Good. I got one right. Thanks very much for everyone that joined us. We don't have any further questions, but you can always send questions through to Public Contract Scotland through the relevant challenge, and I'll send them through to the challenge sponsors, which will get back to you. The video will be available on YouTube going forward, so you can watch it on catch up, as they say. Rui Cardoso, Carol, Albert, Jonathan, thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to this challenge, but I say this in every end of the video. So thank you very much, and see you soon.